Welcome to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Saranitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And tonight we are joined by one of our freelance staff members, Jared Keene. Jared, how are you this evening, man?
I'm great, John. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're excited that you're on with us, and we're looking forward to talking some football with you tonight. And before we do start the conversation here, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. In the market to sell your current home and move into your next home or purchase your first home? Well, then give our good friend Herb Devine a call. 781-254-2846. You can also email him at herb@mortgageright.com. Now is the right time to not only get into your next home, but to also refinance. Rates have been steadily declining, and now is a good time to get into that refi if you're ready to do that. Herb can help you with that. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846. Or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to start off like we do every week, talking about our beloved New England Patriots, who were shellacked yesterday by the San Francisco 49ers, 30-13. And look, when you look at that score, you might say, okay, yeah, they lost by 3 scores. Not good. Maybe not as bad as we thought. No, it was worse than the score would indicate. I don't believe they were ever in that game. Bad loss for them. That's 2 bad losses in a row. They do come back home on Sunday to take on the Miami Dolphins. But, Kevin, I'm going to start with you here, and then we'll go around the horn. Just some thoughts on this one. I mean, look, I think we all expected this, and San Francisco somehow, middle of last week, started getting guys back. Kittle, Samuel, they played. I think we all thought that this game would play out the way it did.
Yeah, so I wrote it yesterday on the site. There was better compete level than there was against the Jets. But what does that get you in the end, right? So, it was ugly, and it's pretty much what you expect with this offense. And the injuries just continue to mount. I think that's the worst part about yesterday is you lose Duggar, you lose Andrews, you lose Wallace. It's only getting worse. So, again, you said it about what we expected. I don't expect the line to get any better anytime soon. And if you wanted to see Drake May, you're not going to now. Mayo talked about it today. Brissett's still the guy. And at this point, even the most hardened, May should play guy, if you watch that O-line, yes, it's football, and yes, he's going to get hit no matter what. But you're now risking long-term development if you play him, I think. So, it's ugly. This Miami game is going to be even uglier on Sunday. If you're watching them right now on Monday Night Football, it is not pretty. So this is what they are, and it's going to be a long season.
Jared?
I think Kevin hit the nail on the head. It's ugly. Brissett not playing well at QB. But again, you can't really afford to go to May right now. He's going to go in there and get pounded. Again, the injuries are not great. Losing Duggar, who's played really well this season, is tough. And, again, it's just, I didn't expect them to be really in the game yesterday. San Fran's a good team with or without injuries. It's just, again, like Kevin said, it's only really getting worse right now. And, there's not really much hope. Again, you can compete, but you got to get W's and, try to play some of the best football you can. And that's just not happening.
No, and you bring up a great point, Jared, about Brissett. I think we've all kind of I don't want to say given him a pass, but we've kind of been understanding of the predicament that he's in. But he throws his first interception of the season yesterday. It's a bad one. Fred Warner picks it, brings it back for a touchdown. But yesterday, for the first time since he's been the starting quarterback, you started to see the pressure starting to get to him from a decision-making standpoint. He's trying to put the ball into places that he shouldn't. There are times he holds on to the ball because he's feeling the pressure and he doesn't want to turn it over. He didn't play well. But in his defense, and people can sit here and try to blame him all they want, it's hard to play well behind an offensive line like that. They're just not very good. Plain and simple. And to Kevin's point, you're not fixing that in season. It is what it is. We've said that now for weeks, that they're going to live and die with what they got. And, I think Mayo in his heart of hearts, would love to see Drake May, but him coming out today and pouring cold water on the notion, I think just goes to show you that they know where they're at, they know what they are, and they know they're not in a position, at least not anytime in the next few weeks, provided Brissett doesn't get hurt. They're not in a position right now to make a quarterback change. And quite frankly, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't throw the kid out there. Offensive line aside, the other thing you got to consider here is they have no skill group. This skill group is not very good. I mean, Antonio Gibson was your leading receiver yesterday with 3 catches with 67 yards. I mean, it's not – that's not going to get better either. Yeah, you might get Kendrick Bourne coming back will help, but again, you lack that dynamic skill piece that can get you back into a football game and change the trajectory of a game. They don't have that either.
No, and to your point, people can start talking about the trade deadline. Do you even bother, try to go look for Devontae Adams? You have so many holes and so many things that you need. That's what I'm saying. You can't.
I don't give up the draft capital to get him. This team needs picks. They need to focus on – that's how you're going to make this team better. As we all know, it's not going to be through free agency. Guys aren't going to want to sign here. So I don't think this organization is in a place where they can give up draft capital.
No, and Jared, I want your thoughts too. But again, you're going to start hearing a lot more of that as the trade deadline approaches. Do not expect them to do anything. Like I'm serious when I say nothing. Like Costanza, nothing. They're not going to try. No, will they make phone calls and maybe tell us in the media that we're trying? Sure, they have to. For the fans that don't, especially for the fans that are going to keep going to these games. You do have a section of season ticket holders that are still going to show up every Sunday. Now, the stadium's not going to be that full, especially when it gets cold, but they're going to have to say, hey, we tried. But I would not expect anything at the deadline. Like you said, you literally can't give up your future right now when you have so many holes that you need to fill.
There's no point. I mean, again, why would you? That's the best point that was just made, I think, is, why go out and get somebody like Devontae Adams when it's really not going to make probably too much of a difference? Yeah. Sure, Devontae Adams is a good player. You can probably find some receivers that are good players. But again, there's just so many holes that even if you trade for somebody like that, again, how much is that really going to increase your win total or how good you look on offense going forward? Especially with some of the QB play. I think Drake May is ready, but again, it's not a question of if he's ready. It's should he be out there playing behind this brutal offensive line? And again, I think we're all in agreement that he probably shouldn't be out there. And but I mean, Brissett is not playing well, so it's it's a lose-lose right there. So
yeah, no, it is. And to your point, Jared, about Devontae Adams, what good is he going to do you at this point? You can't protect your quarterback. So if your quarterback doesn't have time to get him the ball, it's not going to matter anyway. And Devontae Adams wouldn't want to come here. And I would hope that the Raiders have enough common sense to trade him to a situation where he can compete for a Super Bowl. Not
I think many people would want to come here. Again, right. I think Kevin made the point. Like, who wants to come here right now?
Yeah. No, it's as bad as it was in the early 90s. For me, thinking back to late 80s, early 90s, where this was the worst franchise in the league. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily that now, but they very well could be that by season's end. And
I think
that, well, you can make the argument that they are, but I think that that's a big part of the problem is that going back to any potential trades, you can't give up future draft picks for veterans that aren't going to help you, that might help you maybe win one more game. That's not, it should be about big picture here. And the best way to rebuild this team is through the draft. It's not to say that some free agents won't sign here because they will. Money talks, people walk. It's just that simple. But I do think you're going to have a hard time attracting free agents given the current situation with the team and where they're at in this rebuild. It's going to be hard to get veterans to want to come here next offseason. But certainly I wouldn't waste the picks on a veteran this season. This season is what it is. Look, we've said it all summer, right? In many ways, this is a bridge year for them. This is you know what? Let's take the future quarterback. Let's develop him. Let's try to keep our heads above water. Let's try to be competitive. But they know they're not a playoff team. They know that they're not gonna do much this season. It's about next year and beyond. And I think certainly that's where you're going to try to improve this football team. The defense is a concern too. One thing you could say last year, if you take out the Dallas-New Orleans game, there were a couple of stinkers in there. But one thing you could say about this defense last year was that they played well. They played well for the majority of the season. They were fundamentally sound, and they kept this team in games. And it paid off at the end of the year when they went into Pittsburgh and Denver and won in December. But this defense is a shell of what they were last year. Now, a big reason for that is you trade Judon, the injuries to Barmore and Bentley. That all catches up with you. And now, of course, yesterday they lose Duggar. Are you surprised by how bad the defense has been here the last 3 weeks? I mean, they played well in week one, but they are nothing like that group that we saw in week one right now. I mean, they look nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, look at who's on the staff. Gerard Mayo's your head coach. He was one of the best defensive players here in, the last decade? And Dante Hightower's your linebacker coach. That position's not good either. So the worst part, and Mayo said it yesterday, he said, you tell guys not to touch the stove, and they're still touching the stove. Well, that means they're not listening to the coaching. So that's an even bigger problem, too. It's a disaster across the board right now. Your special teams unit is the best unit on the team, and your kicker is the best player on the team. So it's bad, and yeah, it's surprising given what this staff is and what we thought the staff was going to be on the defensive side of the ball when he put it together.
It's sad when your best player is your kicker. I got a chuckle there just because, I mean, right now it's probably true, which is weird, but I don't know what you do. I mean, it's I think the Barmore injury is crucial. I mean, he's been so good. He provides so much up front. But again, you can't look at just that. I mean, Bentley, obviously a key injury, and like we've talked about Duggar. Duggar's played really well so far this year, as I mentioned, and again, it's not going to get better. Like, what do you do? I mean, Christian Gonzalez has played well, but again, like, you can't rely on one player to play defense for you. It's bad, and I don't like the win in week one was weird because it kind of gives you a false sense of hope.
Yep.
Then to go where we've gone from there, it's
well, you just hit the nail on the head, Jared. It did give fans a sense of false hope because we were all guilty of this after that one, thinking, all right, week one, they go into Cincinnati, tough place. Yeah, Cincinnati doesn't have the best track record the last few years under Zach Taylor in terms of getting off to good starts. But nonetheless, that was a nice win on the road against a team that many considered to be an AFC contender. The problem is, since then, even that Seattle game, that was a close game. They lost in overtime. But even that game, they didn't play well defensively. They gave up big plays, had communication breakdowns on the back end. They were fundamentally flawed. Then they were really fundamentally flawed against the Jets. And yesterday, look, I will give this group credit. They played pretty well early, keeping San Francisco to 2 field goals to keep it a 6-0 game. But then, they give up the long drive, eventually the Kittle touchdown, and then the floodgates kind of opened from there, and San Francisco's talent took over, and that was the difference. But this Patriots team has no chance of being competitive if this defense doesn't play at a high level. All right, before we do move on to some college football talk, let's look ahead to Sunday's game against the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, Kevin, as you just said, they're playing right now. They're playing the Tennessee Titans. At last check, I believe that game was scoreless.
6-0, Tennessee.
6-0 now. 6-0 now, Tennessee.
2 Nick Folk field goals.
Good old friend Nick Folk with a couple of field goals there for the Titans. Look, Miami's not the same team without Tua Tagovailoa. We know that. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink there. I mean, I'm seeing it. I drafted Tyreek Hill with my first pick in one of my drafts, and I'm getting nothing out of him. So Miami's not the same team without Tagovailoa. He is the most important piece there offensively, arguably. This is now all of a sudden a winnable game. I think if we had talked about this 2 weeks ago, we might have said, this is one that they could take it on the chin. But now all of a sudden, this presents as a winnable game. Can they get it done? Based on what you've seen the last 2 weeks, given where Miami's at the quarterback position, can the Patriots do enough on Sunday at home to win this game?
Sure, but it's going to be ugly, and Don't expect to see more than 13 to 16 points from either team, at least in my opinion. It's just, it's going to be another slog. And I think you're going to see, we've said this for weeks now, it's what you're going to see week in and week out. They're going to have to fight for everything. You're going to end up winning on defense. I was happy to hear Pepper's post game yesterday saying we're not going to make excuses for ourselves. And, look, I know it's locker room talk and it's all cliche, but I do think the defense is still pretty good, even with all the injuries that are mounting. I think you can get a pass rush on Miami and force Thompson into some bad stuff. But offensively, I have no faith that you're going to score. And you do still have to defend Tyreek Hill, too. I know you just mentioned he hasn't done much, but speed kills, and you can't teach speed. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they handle him. But can they win? Sure. I do think they will, but again, I'm looking at 13-10, 16-13. I'm not expecting a pretty game by any means.
I was just about to say 13-10. I mean, Miami, again, as John mentioned, is not the same team without Tua. I unfortunately have Tua on my team, on my fantasy team, and it's been a little rough. I'm in an auction league, and I was pretty excited about taking Tua, and now it's a little rough. But yeah, I mean, again, you can just see, I mean, they're not the same team without him. And again, this is a winnable game. Is it going to be pretty? No, not at all. But again, I think you can do some things maybe with the way Miami's offense has declined and, see what you can do against Miami's defense. Miami's defense is still solid, I would say. But, again, yeah, winnable game. Will it happen? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's hard to say right now.
I mean, it's Skylar Thompson or it's Tyler Huntley. And again, you think you can probably win against those QBs, but we're starting Brissett, who isn't playing probably too much better right now. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be a weird game.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's certainly not going to be a clinic film in terms of quarterback play, but it's certainly going to be a low-scoring affair. I mean, either offense is good. I do think this is a game they can win, though. Big thing is going to be setting up that running game, establishing it early. Ramondre Stevenson taking care of the ball. He fumbled for the fourth time in 4 games yesterday.
Brutal.
He's your best.
Brutal.
Yeah, he's your best offensive player, and he's killing you right now. So I still think the formula for this team to win is run the football, control the clock, play good enough defense to win the game. That's their formula. They're not going to beat people by Brissett throwing for 300 yards. It ain't going to happen. Look, he could start for 10 weeks. With that skill group, he's not going to sniff 300 yards. So that's not going to be a theme or a thing for this team this year. But this is a winnable game. Now, if Tua were healthy, we saw it last year. Patriots hung in there, but Miami's just better. They just don't have that guy at quarterback right now that can consistently get this talented skill group the ball, and that's their problem. And at some point, I know they like Skylar Thompson, but Tyler Huntley's a guy that's won games in this league before. He's a veteran backup, longtime Baltimore Ravens backup. At some point, you got to give him a look here because he actually probably gives you a better shot to win than Skylar Thompson does. But nonetheless, this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to play well. I think what it's going to come down to is making that 1 or 2 extra plays that proves to be the difference. I'm going to go with the Patriots here. I think they do make those plays. And like you guys said, I think they win a 16-13 kind of game. All right. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Serenitas. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And tonight we are joined by New England Football Journal staff member Jared Keene, joining us to talk football here on the Monday Night Football Show. Just a reminder, if you're in the market to sell your current home or purchase your first home, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also email him at herb@mortgageright.com. If you're looking to refinance, you can also contact Herb. He can help you with that. He's been doing a ton of refis lately, so he can help you there as well. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, gentlemen, let's shift gears here and talk some college football. And we're going to start with the Boston College Eagles, who, quite frankly, should have lost on Saturday. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers ended up falling off the hill, losing 21-20. And look, I think we all thought that the possibility of a letdown game was there coming off that big win over Michigan State. Of course, Michigan State got thumped by Ohio State last night or on Saturday rather, and they're going to get thumped on Saturday by Oregon. So I don't know how good a win that was anyway. But nonetheless, this is a game that was a trap game, and it ended up playing out that way, Kevin. You were there. They didn't come to play. Thomas Castellanos obviously out with the concussion. Grayson James gets the start, but it wasn't pretty. A win is a win, but if you're Bill O'Brien, they got to look better than that.
Yeah, I'm still not sure it was a concussion either. I actually think it's a leg injury, but whatever. We're never going to find out. It's Foxborough 2.0 down there now. Injuries are off the table. So, look, you mentioned it's a trap game. I was surprised they fell into it, given how much O'Brien harped on it during the week. He literally said, shame on us if it is a trap game. I do think Western Kentucky is better than people give them credit for. That's not to say they're a world beater, and BC probably still should have won, by 20 if they're the team we think they are. But on the other hand, good teams find a way to win when they don't play well. So, and I also think that staff now sort of instills confidence in them, maybe when they don't have it in themselves. I think that's what you saw in the second half on Saturday. But Donovan Ezeraku single-handedly won the game. 14 tackles, 3 sacks, strip sack to ultimately set up the game-winning touchdown from Grayson James to Jerron Bradley. And look, was James great? No, I've been pumping his tires all summer. I thought the offense wouldn't take a dip with him out there. Having talked to some people, he was very nervous, as you'd expect, making his first start for his new team, but he settled in the second half. And look, when you needed him to put a drive together late, he did it. And he made the game-winning throw. We can argue if Jerron, pushed off or not on that touchdown. He probably did. But again, good teams find a way to win when they're not at their best. And now they have a huge stretch coming up. You're on the road until October 25th. You have back-to-back games against Virginia and Virginia Tech with a bye in there. If you can get through that, ACC championship is in play. It won't be easy. You still have Syracuse and North Carolina and Pitt. But 4 of your last 6 are at home. So this is a huge stretch coming up. They avoided the trap ultimately, and we'll see what it looks like on Saturday. But, yeah, again, that's a game they might lose the last handful of years, I think, especially the way they played in the first half. So, yes, it was ugly, but find a way to win.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, again, Kevin is around the team. He sees it. He covers the team, and he knows exactly what's going on. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. Didn't play their best, but find a way to win, and that's what they did. Again, I wasn't overly impressed with James either, but like Kevin said, he put a drive together when he needed to and was able to win the game. Was this game maybe won on defense with specific players? Kevin said maybe, but or probably, but yeah. I think Western Kentucky is better than people think. They were able to move the ball pretty easily. But again, BC found a way to win. And, I think, the stretch is going to be massive. The ACC is wide open. I think the ACC might be the most wide open division in the country. There's no real elite team. I mean, North Carolina has been bad recently. Had a bad loss to Duke this weekend. To my dismay, I'm a North Carolina fan, but more so in basketball than football. But again, just a big win for BC. And again, I don't think there's much else to say. Found a way to get it done. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Joe,
go ahead.
It's also worth noting, you've seen what that crowd looks like for noontime games sometimes. It's the most dead I've ever seen that place. No emotion in the building, more than half empty. In terms of the letdown, there's no spark there. And noontime games are tough. So not an excuse necessarily, but it was your classic, no-show by the fans early on. And it's hard to get up for those kind of games.
Now, wait a minute. I thought that this was the alternative to the Patriots. I saw several members of the BC media, including you and others, who said if you're looking for an alternative to the Patriots, May I introduce you to the 4-1 Boston College Eagles? And then I saw a couple of UConn people write, if you're looking for an alternative to the Patriots, may I introduce you to the 3-2 UConn Huskies? Like, I think that what you just said about the crowd on Saturday, and we can sit here and say it's the noon kickoff and that's the problem. Why is that the problem? Most of the country plays at noon. So it's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a problem for this area because they don't support their college football programs. It's not a problem anywhere else. I just, and this is why when people say, if you're looking for an alternative, they're not going to be the alternative to the Patriots. They're just not. In the early 90s, yes, they were when Coughlin and Foley and Pete Mitchell and those guys were here. But they're not the alternative to the Patriots now. And as much as we all love Coach O'Brien and the job he's done there, that him getting that job has certainly brought in some new fans. I'll say that, and it certainly brought some of the alumni back. But I wouldn't expect this mass exodus from the Patriots to Boston College or UConn for that matter. It's not going to happen, and because this isn't a college football area. But I think the other thing to keep in mind here is I think that this win is a bad look for this football program because they're not meeting the expectations. Even at 4-1, like you said, and I agree, you got to win that game by 2 or 3 scores. Because if you've, quote, arrived as a program that can win more than the usual 6 or 7 games, you got to win that game by 2 or 3 scores. But I also think it speaks to their style of play. They're not going to blow people out because they're going to run the football, play action, push the ball down the field, take a handful of shots every game. But they're not going to be a spread team that's going to spray it all over the place, go tempo, and score once every other possession at minimum. They're not going to do that. So I don't think you're going to see them in a lot of blowout wins. I mean, you saw the blowout win against Duquesne, but that's Duquesne. They're playing an FBS opponent. They're not going to blow them out. They got a tough one this weekend at Virginia. And, you mentioned they got 4 of their last 6 at home. There's some tough games in there. There's some really tough games in there. You got Pitt coming to town. You got Syracuse coming to town. So there's definitely Louisville's coming to town. There's going to be some challenges there. And even on the road, I mean, SMU beat Florida State this weekend handily. That's going to be a tough game going into Dallas and beating them. They're going to have revenge on their minds after that Fenway Bowl loss. But yeah, again, disappointing effort, and especially because O'Brien talked about the importance of not letting this become a trap game. Well, it did, and they almost lost. And, hey, let's tip our hat to Western Kentucky. They came up here, played well, had a shot to win the game. They played a pretty good schedule. Let's not forget, 3 weeks ago they played at Alabama. So they played a pretty good schedule. I was at the game of the year, in my opinion, so far on Saturday, and that was Harvard at Brown. What a game. What an ending. Did either one of you have a chance to see how that game ended?
I did. Once you told me about it, and we all talking about it in the press box. On one hand, I feel for Andrew Ulrich because how many times is that going to happen on special teams, right? Like that's just such an awkward play to have happen late. But on the other hand, for Brown, they're 2-0 now, and again, we talk about this every week. The Ivy League is just so unpredictable. It's wild. So it was awesome to see that kind of finish. I'm glad you were there to cover it. I'm glad we had someone, there on the ground. And it's now a huge spot for Harvard this weekend, Friday night at home, under the lights against a very good UNH team. So they're in a big bounce back spot. But Brown might be the best team in the Ivy League this year. Yale tripped up against Cornell, and Dartmouth has been good, but haven't really played anybody yet. So that's a massive statement for Brown.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, I think, again, just a crazy game. I didn't see the whole game, but I did see how it ended. I look at Matt Childs, Medway High School. Yeah. I think he had 100 yards receiving, including a 75-yard touchdown.
Yep.
I remember.
And that touchdown, Jared, that touchdown really, they were kind of down and out there. They're down 28-10, and that touchdown sparked them. It gave them life again. And that was really in many ways the turning point to where they made it a game in the end.
He came out of the backfield too and ran a nice route. Just down the field. He was wide open. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a very confident player. I remember him again during his time at Medway High. It's funny. I think I remember covering a Medway game when he was a freshman. Medway was getting smoked. I think this might have been at Dover Sherborne, and they put in a backup running back late in the game, and he broke off some nice runs. I remember asking Mazzola after the game, who is this kid? And he said, yeah, Matt Childs. He's going to be a good player. And I remember by the time he was an upperclassman, he was a specimen. Again, a very confident player. Obviously, developed a lot at where did he go? Milton Academy as well after Midway. Yeah. And but again, just a crazy finish, and a big win for Brown.
Yeah, and what's crazy about that game is that Brown could have very easily that game could have been 28-28. I mean, Brown, they didn't get a 2-point conversion. They missed a field goal. I mean, they hit that field goal. They get that 2-point conversion when they scored on the drive previous or 2 possessions before the one that they scored on to win it. If they get that 2-point conversion, now they're within a field goal. It's a 28-25 game, but it's crazy how it all played out. And Coach Orich talked about this after the game, about the fact that it's on him. This loss is on him because they mismanaged the situation at the end of the game. And I don't like piling on. And I did a quick hit after the game with Paige Messier, and we talked about that. I don't want to pile on, but at that point, the coach in me says, you got to go for it there. Go for it on 4th down. You don't get it, that's fine. Now they got to go 90 yards. That, with seconds left, the chances of them scoring and winning are slim to none. So I think that, and look, I understand going for the field goal as well, but that 1 in 10,000 moment, that worst case scenario when you coach your field goal unit, you do the fire drill about a ball getting away from the holder, and they execute the fire drill. It happened, except the problem is it went over their punter's head, who was their holder. And then all of a sudden, Nick Hudson scoops it up, a defensive back from Brown. It actually gets kicked around. Hudson scooped it up, but then eventually he fumbles it. It gets kicked around, and then Brown recovers it. And then the rest is history. I mean, Jake Wilcox hits Mark Mahoney on a fade ball from about 27 yards out with 27 seconds left, and then he throws a corner route to Mahoney for the 2, and that seals it. But it's a big win for James Perry's program. And in typical Coach Perry fashion after the game, it was more about being complimentary of Harvard and how great a game it was and how hard his team is working and how competitive they are. All good points. But at the end of the day, when you go back to when he took this program over during COVID, they had under 100 guys on that roster. He and his staff have done a great job rebuilding the roster, adding depth. There are over 120 guys in the program now. It's a different program. And when you pick up a win, that place was packed. There were over 10,000 people there on Saturday. Beautiful day for football. Home opener. It's Harvard. The Harvard brand travels. I mean, it doesn't – only other game that I think could probably match this in terms of a win for them is Yale. But this was a big win for James Perry's squad. What does it mean long term? Who knows? It's a 10-week sprint in the Ivy League. But certainly, at least in the short term, it's an important win, and it could serve as a springboard. Of course, they have Bryant in town on Saturday. We'll be there for that one as well. UConn continues to impress. I mean, they crushed Buffalo this weekend. Big win for the Huskies. Nick Evers, a running game, solid. Evers also opened things up in the passing game. They hit Skylar Bell for 3 touchdown passes. I mean, another dominant performance. One thing we could say about this UConn program is they have been very good at home under Jim Mora. I mean, a lot of their struggles have been on the road, but at home the last couple of years, I mean, they've taken care of business, and they are rolling now. They're 2-0 on this 6-game homestand. I feel like I'm talking about the UConn baseball team.
Best story in New England right now, by far, I think. I tweeted this out the other day. If you look at their schedule, 8 wins should be the bare minimum expectation right now. They're a good team. They have a good offense. I think the defense is probably more surprising than anything else. But
that secondary is really good, and they're kind of the front 7 is coming along now.
Yep. This offense can put up points in a hurry. Nick Evers, again, you mentioned him. He just looks more comfortable now, which I guess is to be expected, when you're coming into a new place. So, and obviously
4 and 5-star kid, depending on the service.
Yeah, and then you have Jim Mora getting in a scuffle, pregame,
Awesome.
screaming at other coaches. Like, if you're a kid, how can you not want to run through a wall for him right now? So they're the best story in New England by far, and there's a real chance that they can make I don't know how to put this, a serious bowl game. Not that the Myrtle Beach Bowl wasn't serious, but you know what I mean? Like a more respectable bowl, I guess you could say. But I legitimately look at that schedule, and you mentioned they're at home now until November 9th. So if they can keep winning at home, 8 wins is not out of the question at all for them.
I haven't seen this UConn team much, and I don't know much about them, but I do know they have a good offense. And again, Kevin said if you're playing for Jim Mora, that says it all. The guy's a legend, and again, all the pregame stuff. Again, yeah, how can you not give 110% for that guy every game? But yeah, just really seems like they're rolling right now. Again, I'm not familiar with them as much as you guys, but again, great story for a team that's was never really that great in the past. I don't know if that's fair to say, but yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at the numbers, Joe Fagnano, 11-19, 217 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Evers was only 7 of 12 for 51 yards, but the running game wasn't as – yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But the running game wasn't as dominant as it was the week before, but they still rushed for 257 yards, and Cam Edwards had 97 yards rushing and a touchdown. So, yeah, and the defense is the key here. They've got some talent up front. You got Brown at linebacker, Stafford at defensive tackle. You got Dalmont Gordine at defensive tackle, Price Yates at D end. And then that secondary, led by Ronte Jones, that's a really talented group. They got some length back there. They got guys that can play multiple positions. So Jim Mora has got this program rolling now. I know a lot of people were critical early on. A lot of UConn fans were critical early on of new offensive coordinator Gordy Samus, but he's done a great job. Really 3 of the last 4 weeks, they've been really good on offense, and I think that's going to be the key with them. You've got a very good offensive line. You look at that offensive line. Chase Lunt at right tackle. Right now, I said this about Christian Haynes last year, and I was right. I'm going to say it about Chase Lunt. I think Chase Lunt is a top 65, top 70 pick in next April's draft. I would not be surprised if he's off the board no later than the 4th round. I just think, and I think long-term he profiles as a potential left tackle. Their offensive line going into that the FAU game hadn't given up a sack. So,
yeah.
And Valentine Sennett, left tackle, 3-year starter. That's a really good group.
And just one other thing, too. Last Tuesday, even before this Buffalo game, Jim Mora was asked how important the portal was for them. And if you look at who's contributing, it's all portal guys.
Tyler Bell, portal guy.
Yeah, they did a hell of a job picking up correct pieces. And Mora said, and most coaches will say this, it's about finding guys that will fit into the culture and not ruining it. But they've legitimately found, maybe 10 guys that are contributing regularly for this team right now. Just a hell of a job by the staff, too.
Yeah, and to your point, Skylar Bell, 6 catches, $153, 3 touchdown passes. Portal guy. TJ Sheffield, portal guy. 4 catches, 36 yards. But to your point, these guys are making a big difference for this program. Evers does get hurt on Saturday, but another portal guy steps in, Joe Fagnano, former Maine quarterback, and he leads them to 3 scoring drives and a runaway win there. Sticking with the FBS programs, tough one for the Minutemen. I feel like we're saying this every week, but this was genuinely a heartbreaker. You take the lead with seconds left. You give up a drive where Miami of Ohio ties the game, and then inevitably you lose in overtime. Honestly, man, my heart goes out to Don Brown. I think that the kids are playing hard for him. They're playing hard for the staff, but how many more of these losses can you take?
I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Kev. I'm going to jump in first here. You can't lose that football game. You're playing a winless team in Miami of Ohio. Mm-hmm. You're in full position to win that game.
By the way, I like how assertive Keene was there. That was great.
You can't lose that football game. Again, against a not great team, you're in full position to win. Again, it was close kind of throughout the game, kind of a weird game, but when you take that lead with 40 seconds left, 35, 40 seconds left, you cannot, and again, especially if you're up by less than a field goal, you cannot allow that other team to get in position to kick a field goal to win the game. With that little time left on the clock, that's brutal. That's absolutely brutal. Yeah. Sorry, I don't really know what to say. I mean, I was kind of at a loss for words when I saw kind of what happened, but that's as bad as it gets. I mean, that should have been a W written all over it, and instead you come away giving up the game time field goal or whatever with no time left on the clock, and then allowing the team to go down in overtime or whatever and kick a game-winning field goal. I mean, yeah, brutal, absolutely ridiculous.
Just to that point, Jared, the worst part is you have the guy who's called Dr. Blitz, the guy who you think is a defensive guru. Shouldn't say who think, he is a defensive guru. But, when he talked about it the other day, he said, yeah, you're trying to make sure guys aren't throwing over your head, but you're also counting on other guys to be fillers when the quarterback scrambles, and they simply didn't do it. Just let Miami of Ohio run wild. I think it was 47 yards and 7 plays in 40 seconds. So it's one of those, we always say it's another one of the worst losses for UMass, but that's a long ass list now. That list is growing by the day or by the week. And again, we've talked about this a lot now. At some point, if you're Don Brown, why don't you just throw your hands up and say, I can't do this? Now, I know it's not going to be this season. And John, you've made the point, and I've kind of come to your side. They're going to the MAC next year. He's going to see that through. But at some point, if you're him, there's only so much talent you can recruit. There's only so much you can do with those facilities. And there's only so much you can do in Amherst. So I'm with you. I feel bad for him at this point. Part of it is on him. The defense just isn't that good still. But again, at some point, if you're UMass, you need to start worrying about who that next guy is going to be, because I don't know if he's going to want to be here for more than another, 2 years or so.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any easier. They go to Northern Illinois this week, who has lost a couple of games in a row. I mean, they lost an ugly game to Buffalo 2 weeks ago, 23-20. And then, of course, last week they lost 24-17 to NC State. But that's a tough game for UMass. I mean, Thomas Hammock done a great job there. They beat Notre Dame earlier this year. That's still one of the better teams in the MAC. It's going to be a tough game for UMass to go on the road and win. And look, they can be competitive. I mean, they were competitive against Toledo, but the bottom line is this: for UMass, when you go into the MAC, you got to be more than competitive. That's a conference that works for you. That's a conference that fits. You got to win in that conference, okay? And they haven't proven that they can do that the last couple of years. And I said this last week, and I'll say it again, I'm not speculating about Brown's future, what he's thinking, what he's going to do, what he might do, what he might not do. I think at the end of the day, at this point, you just want to get a win. Problem is, your next 2 games are Northern Illinois, then you come back home on Columbus Day weekend to take on Missouri. Again, I don't know what an SEC team is thinking flying out here to play at McGuirk, but I would love to be a fly in the wall in that Missouri locker room just to hear what they have to say about McGuirk, because that would be –
I just want to see their faces when they see the locker rooms. It's a shed. It's literally a shed. They're going to be in for a wild awakening going to that place. But don't forget, you got Mississippi State in 2 weeks after that, too. It's going to get ugly.
Yeah, but the problem is, at least with that game, again, they've struggled under first-year coach Jeff Levy. Right, but they've struggled. So you could potentially hang around in that game for a little bit. But, yeah, I think, again, at the end of the day, look, that's a game they should have won the other day. The tenor of your season changes if you win that game, and now you're 2-3 going into this week's game, and now you've got a little bit of momentum. Instead, now you're facing a Northern Illinois team coming off back-to-back losses that's hungry to get back on track. You're playing an SEC team, one of 3 SEC teams left on your schedule, and then again, eventually you'll have a bye, but then you got to go to Mississippi State. You got to go to Georgia. It's not good, and as I mentioned, we don't want to speculate about Brown's job status because we don't know. No one knows. But I do think the level of frustration, I'm sure, is still rising because this is a program that and Don would tell you this, and I think a lot of people would tell you this. It should be better. They should be better than they are right now at 1-4. So hopefully they get it turned around this week. A win at Northern Illinois would be really nice for the Minutemen and the faithful. Just real quick, Maine picks up a big win on the road against a ranked Albany team. Question here for you, Stone. Is this the biggest win in Jordan Stevens' tenure at Maine?
Oh, yeah, it has to be, right? I mean, he's been there for 3 years. Look, they haven't won the CAA since 2018. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're at that level yet to compete for a conference title. But again, I wrote this on the site today. This is a win that, and Jordan Stevens talked about this morning. This is a win that makes kids believe even that much more. It makes going to work every day that much easier. You know, maybe a kid watches a little bit more film or is in the playbook a little bit more. Maybe he wakes up a little bit earlier. You know what I mean? Just in terms of the buy-in, and this isn't to say he didn't have it, because he clearly has. The program has taken steps forward, but you're 3-2 now, and there's sort of a, hey, we can compete with anybody on a given Saturday. And I'm not sure they had that the last 2 years, even though they've won a few games. That's a massive win for the program, and sort of one of those check boxes in terms of the steps it takes to get back to competing for a league title and an FCS playoff bid. So I don't think you can overstate how big that win is. And you win it on the road against a top 25 team. You also win it on defense at the end, too, with a pick 6 to seal it. So such a big moment for Maine, and I couldn't be more happy for Jordan Stevens.
I'm not really too familiar with Maine, John. Go for it, man.
Yeah, no, it's a big win for them. And I think, look, this going into the season, we said that this was going to be a pivotal season for this program. And Coach Stevens is a Maine native. He's a Black Bear alum. But this was going to be a pivotal season for them. You hope that they can continue this momentum that they've established here. Obviously, they got plenty of big games left on the schedule, including the last game of the season against UNH for the Bryce Musket Cowl. But I'm sorry, for the Bryce Cowell Musket. But at the end of the day, I think that this is a big win for them. When you beat a ranked opponent, look, 2 weeks ago when they lost the way they did at home to Monmouth, a lot of people looked at that and said, no, typical Maine. But they've won a couple of games in a row since, and they could have very easily folded their tents in that situation, but they didn't. And I think it speaks to Coach Stevens and his staff and the job that they've done there. This is a program that's on the rise. They're coming. They recruit well. They have a nice recruiting base in Canada. They're going to continue to get talent through the door there. They do a nice job in the portal. So I think that this is a program that can continue to build off of the success that they've had this season. Dartmouth squeaks past Merrimack 16-14. Owen Zalk, the hero there. You mentioned Dartmouth, Kevin, and I think Coach McCorkle will tell you the same thing. They haven't been tested yet. Well, that's going to start to change now. They're going to start to get tested as they get into Ivy League play. But certainly, hey, 2-0 is 2-0. And this is a Dartmouth team last year that finished strong and ended up getting a piece of the Ivy League puzzle. They're going to be a player there when the dust settles. They'll be a player in terms of the Ivy League and possibly getting another piece of that pie this year. Yale with another tough loss to Cornell. Cornell has their number. They beat them down in New Haven last year, beat them this year in New York. The Big Red have Yale's number. Hopefully Tony Reno's squad can bounce back. They host Central Connecticut State on Saturday. Another big game for CCSU. They had a bye this week, but man, Adam Lechtenberg, what a schedule for the Blue Devils there. I mean, that should be a good game. As we saw 2 weeks ago, CCSU almost beat UMass, so they should be able to compete. Holy Cross loses a tough one to Syracuse, 42-14. I mean, look, I think that if you're Dan Kern and his staff, you want to get into Patriot League play because that's still there for you. You could still potentially win a Patriot League title, but tough start nonetheless. I don't want to say we expected this because, when you lose a guy like Bob Chesney, when you lose the talent that they lost, I mean, Dan walked into a situation where there's a lot of talent that had gone out the door there, but a tough start nonetheless for the Crusaders.
Yeah, look, 3 of those 4 losses will put Syracuse to the side. There was a very, very slim chance they were going into the Dome and beating that team. 3 of the 4 losses so far have been one-possession games. Now, you can make an argument that they should have won probably 2 of them by not getting stops late. But yeah, you need to get in Patriot League play. But you're right. The talent just, it's not there. It's not what they had the last 5 years when they won 5 straight Patriot League titles. I still think that they're better than their record is, and I still believe in Joe Pazanski as their quarterback. But losing Jordan Fuller is huge. You can't replace that on offense, and you can't replace that in the locker room on game day as well. I know he's still going to be around the team, but he was probably going to be your best player by far this year. So huge loss. And I think Curran, you mentioned it, I think he knew sort of what this year was going to be. He's got to now get his recruiting classes in there, very similar to how he built Merrimack. I think it's going to sort of be the same thing. So tough start. I do expect them to be more competitive in Patriot League play. You never know. They could compete for a league title again, but I think we're a year or two away from them sort of getting back to that top tier in the league.
I think it's pretty clear that Curran's a good coach, but I think even outside of players, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, really, it's with Holy Cross. It seems like the big loss was Bob Chesney. It seemed like he brought so much energy to that program.
You're seeing it now in James Madison.
I mean, they hammered UNC a couple of weeks ago too. Absolutely annihilated them. They can put up points. He's obviously doing a really nice job there, but again, just the way he just kind of just watching Stone's coverage, of Holy Cross or whatever over the years, it just seemed like he brought so much, again, energy and, I don't know what really the right word choice is here, but, his players seem to love him, really did a nice job there. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest losses for Holy Cross is losing him. Again, Syracuse is a tough game. Syracuse, I believe, is playing pretty well this year. So,
they are.
That's going to be a tough one, on paper as well, and it showed. But yeah.
And Delaware beat Sacred Heart this weekend as well. So Pioneers scuffling here a little bit, back-to-back losses. All right, final segment here with you guys. As we wrap up the show, we do want to talk some high school football here. Of course, Jared, on Friday night, you got an opportunity to see Catholic Memorial up close. 56-28 winners over Leominster. And, we were talking about this before we went live. You were pretty impressed with the Knights.
Oh, yeah. Again, 15 years at Metro West. I didn't get a chance to see CM, really. And it was actually my first time meeting John DiBiaso. What a character! But I mean,
they don't make him like John DiBiaso anymore. That's for sure.
He was actually real nice to me. Again, had a lot of great things to say about you guys in the site. Mentioned all you guys by name, and a lot of good things to say about the job all you guys do and the site does. But I mean, Leominster started the ball, went 3 and out. CM's field position as well. I mean, CM had the ball in Leominster territory or on their own 40 or 45 pretty much most of the whole game. But, I mean, Mackay Dodd, who is headed to BC, first play from scrimmage, again, handoff right, busted it upfield, broke a couple of tackles, juked a couple of defenders, and then just cut back left into the open space and, basically cruised to the end zone. It was, I mean, it didn't look fair. Kais Flannery, what a player. Really impressed with him. It's wild that he's only a junior. I couldn't really believe that, but again, counted for 6 touchdowns, made some really nice throws, made some really good decisions with the ball. Again, had a pair of rushing touchdowns as well. They just have so many weapons. I mean, they're massive up front. They controlled the line of scrimmage as well. And DiBiaso talked about how that's going to be kind of crucial for them going forward. But yeah, I mean, Leominster has some big boys, but CM's D line was just getting pressure on Lopez all day. Didn't really make Lopez look like a great QB. We obviously know Lopez is a great QB, and DiBiaso gave him a lot of praise after the game, but he didn't make a lot of great plays, and a lot of that had to do with CM's defense, their speed, their strength, their schemes, you name it. I mean, again, you don't play in 3 weeks and you put up 56 points against a really good Leominster team and double them up. And I think
you had seen Leominster against Milford. So, I mean,
and what a game that was. That was a ridiculous game.
And Leominster they'll be a sleeper in D1. They'll be a team to keep an eye on.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, we know Cyrus Lopez is a great player. It's funny, actually, the two games that I've seen him, he hasn't actually played particularly well until the end of that Milford game. I mean, Milford actually played really good defense against him, especially in the first half. They threw different looks at him, kind of threw him off a bit. I'm pretty sure in the first half of that Milford game, he was 2 of 12 passing for like 40-something yards and an interception. I mean, you give credit to Milford there. But again, when Lopez had to make plays, he did in that Milford game. Threw a late touchdown, converted a wild two himself, where he basically rolled right, then came all the way back left and beat everybody to the pylon in the left corner. And then came up with a game-stealing interception as well on defense. But again, what a game that was, and I'm sure Dale and Dana weren't too happy about that one. But and Milford's actually played pretty poorly since then. They would have squeaked out a 7-6 win against Leominster.
Yeah, and they lost 28-7 to Natick Friday night.
Smoked by Natick the other night. So, but again, I couldn't have been more impressed with CM. I mean, they were rearing to get back out there. I wasn't really sure how they would play after not playing in 3 weeks, but holy smokes, man. Just a different level.
They are. They're good. Xaverian loses a tough one to Springfield Central. Back and forth game, but ultimately Springfield Central prevails there. Big win for Springfield Central. I mean, again, when we talk about Division I, we're so hyper-focused on Xaverian and the prep, but we forget about St. John and we forget about Springfield Central at times. They got your attention this week with a big win over Xaverian. The X does return home this week to take on Central Catholic, and what should be a pretty good game. Jared, I know you're going to be there for that one. We had a couple of really interesting interstate matchups this weekend as well. Greenwich outlasting Bishop Hendricken down in Greenwich 21-20. MJ D'Angelo had put on a show for the Cardinals, accounting for all three of their touchdowns. Hendricken had their chances, but ultimately Greenwich found a way to get it done there. Big win for them. Staying in Connecticut, Staples picked up a big 28-21 win over Maloney. But perhaps the shocker of the weekend in the Nutmeg State was Massac going into New Canaan, beating them 14-0. Massac always plays really good defense, but people don't do that to that New Canaan program. They don't do it often. That was an impressive win, and in many ways, Massac has got people's attention now. But then Windsor tops them by knocking off Darien, who also has looked the part through 2 weeks. That's a big win for Windsor as well. Darien, of course, was cruising along. Ben Rolap at quarterback, Roach at tight end. But at the end of the day, that Windsor team, man, they're skilled, they're tough, their scheme is hard. That proved to be the difference. And of course, you had some good games here in Massachusetts as well. King Philip beating Foxborough 21-6 in a game that could have very easily gone either way, but the Warriors pulled away in the third quarter. Good game there. And you had some other good matchups as well in the Bay State. But overall, another really good weekend for New England football. Thornton Academy up in Maine beating Bonnie Eagle. And some pretty good games and some fun games. This weekend doesn't have the quality of matchups we saw last weekend, but it should be a good weekend nonetheless.
Yeah, and I was in Burlington. I was in Cambridge for Burlington and Cambridge the other day. Burlington actually fell behind 12-0, but Anthony Guerriere carried the team on his back. Ryan Brooks had 5 catches for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just kind of a wild game. He ended up scoring 34 points in the second half. Had a late touchdown in the first half to cut it to 12-7 and just sort of carried that momentum there. I'm impressed with Burlington. Defense wasn't great, but their offense, there's a lot of talent there. So they're 3-0 now, and they can make some noise this year as well. I thought the most surprising score to me this weekend was Old Rochester and Dartmouth. Old Rochester going to Dartmouth and beating that team led by Jackson Hart. Very surprising, but that's a hell of a statement by them as well. So a lot of surprises last week overall.
Yeah, and I mentioned the
sorry, John. Franklin beating Duxbury. I mean, Franklin beating Duxbury is massive.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I saw Franklin a couple of weeks ago against Brockton. Brockton actually controlled the time of possession mostly in that game and had some good runs. Franklin played good defense when they needed to, but and it's I know Todd Kiley extremely well. Covered a lot of Holliston football over the years. It's great to see kind of what he's doing, running different schemes, bringing different QBs for different packages. Got to see him run the war, which is legendary. But yeah, I mean, just what a win for Franklin to now come back and beat Duxbury. Extremely impressive. Extremely impressive.
And that's a talented group. You know, they got thumped on Thanksgiving by KP last year, and those guys were young, but you bring back Terrell, you bring back Rampino. They've got a talented group there. Weber. They've got some good young players there. And Todd Kiley's the right guy for that job. Once Ian Bain left, you were going to need to get a guy that's been there, done that before to keep that program where Ian had put it. And I think that Todd's that guy, and he brought his staff with him. I mean, Coach Athy running the defense, Coach Perry coaching the lines. He's done a great job there. He did a great job for Kiley for years at Holliston. So, yeah, it's a huge win for them. And Franklin's got people's attention now. You know, they've won 3 in a row. They've got 3 nice wins. You know, people are paying more attention to them for sure. And then, of course, another game in the Hawk that was a really good matchup was Marshfield-Mansfield. Marshfield had to come from behind to win 13-10. Mansfield is proving that they can play with people, though, and that they're going to be a factor in that Davenport. And don't sleep on Mike Redding coach teams in the playoffs. I still think the Hornets are going to be amongst the favorites in D3. Another interstate matchup that was a really good matchup was North Kingstown out of Rhode Island going up to Westfield and beating the Bombers. It was a big win for North Kingstown. They won 42-20. And again, I think, you know, for them, they got a big one this week, and we'll be there this weekend, of course, when they travel to Central and Providence. But now they're starting to get their mojo back. And, of course, arguably the biggest game this weekend in New England is going to be in Providence. It's the rivalry game, Bishop Hendricken and LaSalle Academy. It should be a really good game. Both programs have gone off to good starts. You know, the last couple of years, it's been one program dominating the other, but this one looks like it's going to be a classic. Should be a pretty good one. We'll have coverage of that one for you as well. All right, gents, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
Jared, you're the guest. Go ahead.
Oh, man. You know, I guess, you know, I'll just go corny here, but I just want to, again, it's just been awesome, you know, being able to contribute for you guys. Again, I wish I'd started for you guys sooner. But yeah, just being able to come on board here and provide whatever help I can and you know, be able to work with some outstanding people is awesome. You know, just being able to come on here now and talk some football. This is just an awesome opportunity. And, you know, I can't thank you guys enough. I'm, you know, excited to see what else I cover the rest of the year, and hopefully we can get out to a couple of college games soon. And, you know, I'm excited to see Central Catholic as well on Friday. I saw Xaverian week 1 when they beat who they play, Bishop
Fian.
Yeah. You know, they were good, but I'm curious to see how X is now and after a few weeks. And, you know, I don't think I've ever covered Central Catholic before either. So I'm excited for that. And, you know, again, I can't thank you guys enough for letting me come on board here and help you guys out.
Well, Jared, I'll add on to that. It's been a pleasure. I told you were the first people I wanted on board when we needed writers. So, and John, real quick, just quick story time. You'll appreciate this. Covering a Norwood game when you were the head coach, I want to say had to be 2011. I walked in the press box. The game time had gotten changed. It got pushed back maybe like 3 hours for some reason. And I can't remember why. I might have just had
I can't remember why either.
But I walked to the press box and I met Jared that day. You guys were playing Natick. And he ultimately got me my start at the Metro West. So it's been nice to kind of return the favor about a decade later. But just in terms of final thoughts, well, we're halfway through the season, both in high school and college. So games are starting to become bigger. The weather's starting to change, obviously. And as we head into October, get out to a game, man. If you can get to a high school or college game, the football around here, both at the high school and Division I level, is so underrated. And I don't say that just because we cover all these teams. It's a hell of a time if you can go out and enjoy a Saturday. So do that. And as always, just help us out. Subscribe to the site. Grab a hat, grab a T-shirt, whatever you can do.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Kevin said, Jared. I want to say thank you for coming on board and working with us. We really appreciate it, man. Your experience and your knowledge is much appreciated, and we look forward to working with you for a long time. I think you bring a lot to our coverage, and that experience, voice, and you bring credibility to our coverage. So we really appreciate you coming on board and being a part of the staff. And like I said, we look forward to working with you, not only just on the writing side of things, but doing more of this stuff. So we definitely are looking forward to having you on more with all our live streams. But I want to say thank you for taking the time tonight. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. It's great to see you. We'd love to have you on again here in the near future. Kevin, good to see you too, man. We'll be back at it next Monday night. Plenty of football coming up this week. Like Kevin said, make sure you get out there and check out a game. For Kevin Stone and Jared Keene, I'm John Sirenitas. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, peace.